You're listening to the Word Slinger Podcast, episode 21, Weightless with Gregg McBride.
This episode of the Word Slinger Podcast is brought to you by Happy Pants Books. Are you a coach, consultant, or keynote speaker who needs to publish or perish? Get your ideas out of your head and onto the page. Visit happypantsbooks.com.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented Pants Optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
Hey everybody, it is Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger. I'm kind of ashamed to admit this, but I'm kind of a hefty word slinger. I got a little bit of junk in the trunk, you might say, and I got a little spare tire around the middle. And I work on that, and I've had my ups and downs in that. And over the years, I've had success with diets, and then I've kind of fallen back on the old bad ways with a Z. And pigged out and put it all back on. So, and I have trouble with exercise and that sort of thing. So it's been a struggle for me to deal with weight in the past, but I'm learning how to overcome that. And part of how I'm learning to do that is talking with people who've actually been successful in losing weight. One of those people is my new friend, Gregg McBride, who is the author of Weightless, My Life as a Fat Man and How I Escaped It. And that is it's a fascinating book. It's interesting because of his approach. He's definitely looking at changing some small things in your life bit by bit. I use the term iterative process in the podcast, which throws things a little for a loop. But no, just kidding. Weight loss is one of those things that everybody seems to struggle with. Everyone I know personally, and even the people that we look to as sort of icons of fitness, they have their struggles too. For example, and this is someone who is briefly mentioned in McBride's book, but one of the winners of the show on NBC, Biggest Loser. He has continued to struggle with his weight even after winning the show and becoming sort of an icon of fitness and going around and doing speeches and that sort of thing. So he even has trouble. So you're not alone in this. If you're someone who struggles with a few extra pounds or a lot of extra pounds, there are ways to become healthier. Some of it takes some willpower. It's true. But I like Gregg's approach. It's all about, taking small steps and loving yourself. It's funny because I love what he says. I'm going to let him say it, but the gist of it here is, you wouldn't do much to help out somebody you're really hated. So if you're hating yourself, what does that say? So anyway, from your friendly, hefty neighborhood word slinger to your ears, here is a fantastic interview with my new good friend, Gregg McBride. Well, hey everybody, it's Kevin, and I'm here today with a special guest. His name is Gregg McBride, and he is the author of Weightless, My Life as a Fat Man and How I Escaped It, which could hopefully be my title someday. How are you doing, Gregg?
I'm doing excellent. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show and taking the time. And I've gotten your book and I've started thumbing through. I haven't been able to read the whole thing yet, and I apologize. But I have looked at the photos, and I've gotten a little bit of your story through captions and some of the intro of the book and your website, and it's a pretty fascinating story. Why don't you give us some background, like where did this all start for you?
Well, it really started at an early age. I love to say that it began at birth, where I weighed 8 pounds and 6 ounces. And then eventually, when I graduated from college, I weighed over 450 pounds. And then had, blossomed, as I like to say, over the years up until that point, and always trying to lose the weight and stuff. And then went on a bit of a roller coaster ride trying to lose it. And I finally did take it off in a very sane way. There was no magic wand, as people are very often disappointed to hear. But, it was through good old diet and exercise. Turns out that works. And the best part is that at this point I've kept over 250 pounds of excess weight off for almost 2 decades.
Wow.
And so, so I really like to get the word out, because I think right now more than ever the commercial diet industry is full of potentially confusing messages. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and everybody's always looking for that quick fix. And we see things on TV like The Biggest Loser. We'll see somebody, lose a tremendous amount of weight in 4 months, not factoring in the fact that, they've got a personal chef, a personal trainer, and TV cameras. There's no easier diet than TV cameras following you. But, in the real world, it can be done, and I'm kind of proof of this. If you go to the diet section or the health section of a bookstore, you'll see rows and rows of books, but most of them are not written by people who've actually lost the weight. And they may be very well-meaning. They may have a lot of good information from their degrees, but until you've actually taken the journey, you don't quite get that whole fat thinking. And so that, I thought that the story needed to be told unedited, and Weightless is sort of this hybrid book in that it's part memoir, it's part, there's a lot of humor in there's a lot of tragedy. We've all, all of us can relate to tough challenges in our life, but there's also a lot of triumph, and the title Weightless, I think, relates as much to getting rid of the mental weight as it does the physical weight, and that's something we all can relate to.
Yeah, that's always been the challenge, I think, isn't it? You need to lose weight. You know that you need that to be healthier, and you want to look better and feel better. But 15 days into that diet, you're suddenly finding yourself, stopping at McDonald's or
or 15 minutes. In my case, I would always begin diets on Monday, and this is all chronicled in the book. And I would, sometimes I wouldn't make it an hour. At best, I would usually make it until the evening, and then that begins the on-off syndrome, or the cheating and not cheating syndrome, and then something a lot of people with dieters mentality can relate to is I was a victim of always doing the Last Supper. And that was, okay, tonight's the last night I'm ever going to have barbecued ribs and French fries and ice cream, because from now on I'm going to be healthy. And so thinking that it was the last time I was going to do that, I would, of course, eat for 2, myself in the state of New Jersey. And so, but you do that day after day after day, and you're basically bludgeoning yourself. You're barely enjoying the food at that point. And, of course, gaining weight and doing all sorts of other, disastrous things to your health. But it's a cycle that we all get involved in. And, I think a lot of the diet industry focuses on the stomach when so much of it is actually in our head. It's in our thinking, and that's really where we're going to find the key to health.
Where does someone start with that? I mean, there are 50 million people in the U.S., I think, and most of them are overweight. So how do they start with changing their thinking about that?
Yeah, obesity is a huge problem. In fact, I don't have the figure handy, but as I should for the podcast here. But they're saying that in a couple years, obesity is going to be one of the reasons that could bankrupt us in terms of medical expenses, just because it affects everything, literally. One thing I love to say, I have a couple different ideas for anyone looking to make a change, and one is you can make a small change right away without even going on a diet or beginning an exercise program, which both are good things to do. But one of my things that I did when I was overweight was I was drinking tons of soda. And whether it was sugary soda or diet soda, I was drinking at least 12 cans a day. And I always love to say that when I weighed 450 pounds, I was drinking at least 12 Diet Cokes a day.
Yeah. Wow.
And, you basically have 12 ounces of chemicals there. And if you were to replace the soda you're drinking, even if it's just 2 a day, with water, that is a huge change, and you will feel a difference in your body. So I like to think of like little things like that.
Yeah.
But on a larger note, in terms of trying to get in touch with this beast that we're all trying to tame, I think so often we think in sort of a before and after mentality, and it's something that we're sold, and we love to see these before and after pictures, and I admit even I have this great before and after picture. I have to, some people aren't even sure that it's me, but the real trick of successful dieting or successful getting healthy is to think of ourselves in affectionate terms. And I'm in Los Angeles, so I have the Nutty Crunchy card, so I can go here easily. But, we so often we think of ourselves in negative terms, and we're like, oh my gosh, because my waist is a certain size, or because, I had to say a Hail Mary to button my jeans, or because I'm sweaty from walking across a room, I'm a bad person. You're not a bad person. In fact, you're perfect right now at this weight. But as a perfect person, why not have a water instead of a diet soda? And why not have a delicious salad and then save the little ice cream treat for the weekend and, make it a reasonable portion, not my old portion of a whole carton with a bag of cookies on it. But really, you think in terms of, who do you want to help as a human being? Like if a friend came to you and asked for a favor or needed some help in something, of course you want to help them. And if somebody that you didn't really care for or even an enemy came to you, of course you'd be like, forget it, I don't want to help you. And so often we really think of ourselves as the enemy. Yeah. And I know that probably sounds trite to a lot of people listening to the podcast right now, but I promise you, if we start to shift that thinking and really accept and love ourselves in this moment, it really is one of the keys to successful transformation.
Yeah, I could see that. I actually like that. I don't think that sounds trite at all. I like the idea of approaching yourself as a friend instead of an enemy. I think most of us still look at ourselves in a negative light every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I laugh at in my before picture, which people can see if they buy the book or even just Google me, or if you go to juststopeatingsomuch.com, they can see before pictures. But one of the things I love to point out is that my heaviest, and it's ridiculous, like I don't know how I braved up to take my shirt off for the picture because you could see the stretch marks, you could see the man boobs, all that stuff. But I love to point out, you can't quite tell, but I had a perm in that picture. And so even though I was a virtual recluse at that point, I was so afraid of walking outside of my apartment because I was just sure everyone was judging me. And some were and some weren't. And of course, I was judging myself the most harshly. Yeah. But I love that 450 plus pound Gregg somehow went out and got a perm, like it just tells me that I had not given up hope. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, okay, so you wear a size XX waist or a size XX dress or whatever, go get that size and make it nice and feel good about yourself now, because if you're walking around hating yourself, that's going to lead to a bag of cookies at the end of the day or whatever,
Yeah. So, okay, so that's a good start. Start thinking of yourself in better terms and start treating yourself like a friend. But and we know if we're adding water and we're adding a salad and taking away cookies and soda, that's going to help. What about in terms of exercise? What would be a good start for exercise for people?
Well, exercise is essential. And, I was somebody that did not want to work out ever. Yeah. And at my heaviest, I would get out of breath from actually talking on the phone. So I was out of shape completely, inside and out. But I'm a big proponent of working out. I still hate it to this day. I want everyone to know I'm still human. I hate it. But I do get up every day and do it and think of, just getting to that cup of coffee when I'm done, my reward. Yeah. But a great exercise for everyone, and I still do it too, is walking. Walking is one of the most effective exercises anyone can do. And the great part is, of course, you don't have to join a gym. You don't have to have a trainer. The key, of course, and if you go to juststopeatingsomuch.com and Google or search for walking, there's some good articles on there for you. But to suck in your stomach, make sure you're thinking about proper posture and pumping your arms. And I don't care how out of shape you are or if you have a medical condition, and of course I always urge everyone to check with their doctors because you want to be as healthy on the inside as the outside. But even if you can just take a 5-minute walk around the block today, do it. And if you're out of breath after, or if your knee joints hurt, take care, be good to yourself. But the next day, make it a 6-minute walk. Yeah. And I'm telling you, power walking is such an amazing exercise. And again, if you're sucking in your stomach, you're going to be working your abs. And if you're pumping your arms, you're going to be getting cardio, which is good for your circulation and your heart and all that good stuff. And of course now, a lot of us are dealing with inclement weather, but a lot of malls around the country, especially in places where it snows and stuff, they have what's called walking hours, and senior citizens have been doing this for years, and it's where the mall will open way before the stores do, and you can basically treat one of the levels of the mall as like an indoor track. And so people can call malls, find out if they have walking hours. Usually 1 or 2 do in everyone's area. And so that's a way that they can even get out, when it's really cold or rainy or whatever outside. And so walking is a huge, huge, huge exercise. And then you just take it from there. At a certain point, you're going to pull up your jeans and they're going to fasten and you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm a supermodel. And then you might want to do a few abs and, you kind of build on it from there. But it's really it all kind of works in sync. There's the eating less, there's the exercise, the water we talked about, the psychological component. And then one of the other big components too, just while we're talking about them, is getting enough rest. Mm-hmm. And it really, the fact is our bodies need sleep in order for our metabolisms to work effectively. And that is as true if you're trying to lose weight as if you're trying to do a podcast, whatever it is. So sleep is essential. And, especially in this society, so often we're like, okay, I'm going to set my alarm early because I got to do this, this, and this. I got to get the kids done, whatever the obligations are. But we owe that to ourselves. And the healthier we are, the more effective we're going to be no matter what is on our to-do list.
And in terms of rest, I get up ungodly early. I get up at 4 a.m. every morning. But I always feel very rested because I think, especially when I exercise. So I think that's key, is that if you're taking care of yourself, you can get that good rest without necessarily packing in the hours, right?
Absolutely. That's the crazy thing about all this is once you start it, you within 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to start not only noticing a physical difference, but you're going to be feeling a difference. And so whether you have 5 pounds to lose or 500 pounds to lose, the good news is you're going to start to feel better way before that goal. And then that is just going to motivate your goals. And, it all comes down to feeling good. I recently had a physical, and my doctor was giving me my good cholesterol numbers, and it turns out, I guess for men, anything above 40 is considered healthy. And my good cholesterol number is over 100, which is, considered part of the 100 club. Yeah. And I have to tell you, as somebody that used to be out of breath on the phone, that feels really good. And of course, my energy shows for it. And you know what? I get up very early as well. I get up at 4:30 every morning and go to the gym. But at the end of the day, when I'm going to sleep, I fall asleep easy. Mm-hmm. I sleep more easily. I remember when I was, drinking the sodas and eating so much that I would, go to sleep basically having a minor heart attack. I could barely breathe. I'd wake up in the middle of the night sweaty. It affects everything.
Yeah, and it really seems like this is overall sort of an iterative process. Like you start small and build up, right?
Yes, absolutely. But please do not use big words with me, Kevin. I'm not prepared for that. But yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing is, Rome wasn't built in a day. These small steps really can make a difference. Again, you don't even have to go on a out-and-out diet. Just replace a couple meals a week with salad. Or I'll tell you one thing that I started to do is buy most of my produce whenever I could at a farmer's market.
Yeah.
And you'll find that it tastes so much better. It's a little bit more expensive, but as my doctor says, it's worth the expense. But you can taste the difference in that. And if you're eating more pure and clean foods, your body is going to respond. For example, when I have ice cream, I'll try and do a brand like Haagen-Dazs, where if you turn around to the back, it's got 5 ingredients that you can pronounce. None of your fancy words, Kevin. All easy to pronounce. And, stuff like that. I always say, if you're going to have a little cream and sugar in your coffee, I don't recommend it daily if you're trying to lose weight. But if you are, have real cream, have real sugar. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of these additives and these chemicals chemicals that we're putting in our bodies confuse our metabolism and also make us feel like crap, you know? And so the more clean we eat, the more pure we eat, the better off we are. And that's something we can change even if we don't go on a, you know, quote unquote diet. If we just start eating in a more clean way and check the ingredients that we're putting into our bodies, that too makes a difference.
And I had read that when you're eating like more wholesome and organic foods, especially raw foods, that the nutrition that you get from that actually helps curb cravings, and you actually end up eating less overall. Have you found that to be true?
You know, I have. Listen, I love to eat as much as anyone does still, and I love my treats, and there's still times I have burgers and fries, and I want extra ketchup with it and stuff, but, you know, I limit those occasions, and I'm always surprised, though. You know, I make this salad at lunch, and there's also lots of recipes on Just Stop Eating So Much, so your listeners can go there for lots of free stuff. But I make this salad at lunch, which basically, you know, is some salad green mix, half of an avocado, some heirloom tomatoes, a few crumpled walnuts, and some cucumber. Mix it all up, a little bit of oil, a little bit of vinegar, and I'm always to this day surprised how good it tastes. Because, of course, when I'm cutting it all up, I'm thinking, boy, would a hamburger taste really good right now. But, you know, eating that salad, it tastes really good. And then the big bonus is when you're done with it, you don't feel like complete crap and can go on with your afternoon and get stuff done. You know, I remember when I used to eat these very heavy lunches, instant lethargy. I couldn't function for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I have that every now and then. I'm dealing with that. So when you were, in your before and after, I mean, what was a typical day like before versus a typical day now?
Well, a typical day before, eating-wise, was pretty incredible. In fact, Joy Bauer of the Today Show, who I'm now friends with, but she at one point chronicled like a typical day for me, and I list out my binges in Weightless because I've always been a writer or would-be writer, so I was always journaling. So all my binges are in there. But she factored in, you know, a typical day, and it was over 9,000 calories a day of eating.
Wow.
And ironically, I was not eating breakfast usually at that time because I would wake up with what I call a food hangover. So my breakfast would basically be a couple cans of diet soda just for the fizz and, you know, maybe a little hit of the caffeine and, you know, whatever other chemicals or additives I was addicted to at that time. And then usually around lunchtime, I would hit a fast food place. And, you know, at my heaviest, I was really so afraid to be seen in public, especially eating. Like I didn't want anyone to know I ate, even though I weighed as much as I did. So I would try to hit a restaurant that would have a drive-through and, you know, get fast food. And like if I was getting something from a burger place, I would order at least 2 sandwiches, at least 2 sides, at least 2 desserts, and then would always order like a small like fish sandwich to eat on the way home in the car because it was just I could not make that 10-minute journey without, you know, eating something on the way. And I would always it's not like I was eating through the whole day. I would always eat to excess, whatever meal it was. So lunch, it would always be that. And then dinner, you know, was sort of the same routine. And I have these little tricks that I was doing. I mean, it's sort of funny now and, you know, makes for a lot of humor in the book. But if I would have to go into restaurants, like I was big into ribs, anything with sauce, and I was there.
Yeah.
And I still love sauce, just so everyone knows. But I would go into a rib restaurant, and I would have a piece of paper, and I would pretend that I was ordering for, like, a group of people, like that they had sent me to order, because I didn't want them to know that I was ordering all that food for myself. Not that they cared, but in my little twisted, perm-headed mind, that's what I thought was going on. And I would then, this was the beauty, I would then order several drinks, and not just the same drink either. So I'm telling you, I could have been a spy. I could have been a spy. Instead, I moved to Hollywood. Same difference. Yeah. But, you know, so there were those kind of mind games going on with the eating. And then, of course, I would go home. I would usually use the coffee table as my TV tray, spread all the food out, and gorge myself. And I would always try and eat as much as I could within 45 minutes, because within 45 minutes I would start to feel full. and then, would get very, very sick. And then usually the routine would be that I would gather up any of the leftover food, throw it away, because for sure the next day was the day that I was going to succeed on my diet. And so I was always throwing lots and lots of food away at the time too, because I was sure that the next day I was somehow going to do it, but didn't.
How's that stack up to a typical day now?
A typical day now, again, is sort of the same. I do eat breakfast. We always hear breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and turns out it is, especially when you're hungry for it. I get up at 4:30, I go work out. I work from home, so I'm pretty rigid with my schedule, but I'll, have breakfast and coffee. And it's usually, I outline a lot of the stuff in the book too, but, I'll do like some granola and a banana. Again, a lot of the eating doesn't have as much to do with what we're eating, although, again, clean and pure is your best route, but the portions that we're doing. And like, we all think we know what a cup is, but turns out my version of a cup is a quart. Even to this day, if I'm pouring cereal for myself, I cannot be trusted. I've got to get out the measuring cup. Measuring is a big part of my life, even now, even almost 2 decades of keeping the weight off, always with fresh fruit. And then, for lunch, I'll do like the salad I just described. Yeah. And then for dinner, I have this, a typical dinner for me. I make this stuff called beard chicken, BEER''D chicken. And if you look for that on my blog, you will find the recipe. And I always make lots and lots of that, and then after it's cooked, I'll freeze it. So that allows me to, you can use the chicken cold once you thaw it in salads, or you can warm it back up again, and I'll have it like with steamed green beans and balsamic vinegar. And that really is a staple for me through the week, the beard chicken. And I love that it freezes and can last for a couple weeks because, of course, we're all super busy and we need that convenience of frozen dinners. But, of course, these prepackaged frozen dinners aren't necessarily the way to go just because they have so much chemicals, so much additives. It's not real food. And, I always tell people that when they do start eating healthier, for the first week or so, it's really going to suck because your tongue is confused by all the crap you're eating, whether it's from fast food or whether it's from, products with lots of additives in them. I mean, even places like Whole Foods, in their prepared foods, they use a lot of sodium. And so we're sort of out of touch with what things taste like. So I always tell people the first week, yes, it is going to suck. You're going to feel like you're eating cardboard and you're going to hate me. But starting in week 2, you're going to be like, wow, tomato is edible. And then it goes on from there.
That really would be shocking to discover.
Yeah, well, it's my version of a tomato used to be in a big fat ketchup bottle with lots of sugar as the first ingredient.
I actually do. I like fruits and vegetables. It's weird. I'm a hefty guy, but I eat well. I just eat too much of it, and I don't exercise enough. So I need to. Well,
that's the thing. Portion control. Goes in all directions, and I could even eat too many green beans at this point. And even though that may not necessarily be too caloric, it does confuse your stomach. I mean, you see people that have even gotten gastric bypass surgeries, and they stretch their stomachs out again. They regain the weight. And so really it is sort of getting back in touch with the feeling of being full. And also, too, I think as people who've dieted a lot, we sort of are under that thought thing that we're never going to eat again. It comes from like, oh, I can't have ice cream again. Yeah, and the fact of the matter is, if you get hungry in the middle of the afternoon, you could have a handful of raw cashews. Mm-hmm. We are adults. We can take care of ourselves. And, I always love to say, take 1/4 cup of raw cashews, 1/4 cup of raisins. And it's not as big as we think we need a snack for, but eat that. And in a half hour from the sweetness and the protein, you're going to be so satisfied. And so really sometimes when we're trying to lose weight, it's almost better to stop eating while we still feel a little hungry. Mm-hmm. And then we wait a half hour, see how we feel. So it's really getting in touch with our bodies and how we feel. That's a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I struggle to reconnect with that. There was a time where I did really well. In fact, thumbing through your book, I noticed that you did a lot of what I have done, which, I lost the weight and then I slowly regained it and then I felt horrible and I lost it again. And it was a repeating cycle, but it's all about
Oh
changing
my
that.
gosh, yeah. I've lost millions of pounds, and my parents. I started to gain weight when I was in first grade, and my parents put me on a really strict diet. That we got on a Xerox from a doctor, so it had to be good. And it was the typical old school diet of like hamburger patty and cottage cheese, and it was looking back, they thought they were doing the right thing, but looking back, that's like one of the worst things you could do for a kid because it really taught me on off. And as I write about in the book, I then got to a point because my parents forbade junk food in the house. We couldn't have it, period. I think I could have been like, here's some drugs, and that would have been okay. But if I had been, here's some cookies, I would literally get a spanking.
Yeah.
And so I started to steal money from my dad's wallet and would go and buy junk food, candy, chips. I would even buy ice cream, and I would have to smuggle it into the house, bring it into my bedroom. I'd have to hide it in the closet. I would of course, have to wrap the ice cream in tinfoil, hoping it would stay cold enough till I could either eat or drink it, and then kind of smuggle the trash out because, again, I would get in trouble.
Yeah.
So it really sort of created this forbidden fruit thing in me. And, we sort of keep that up with ourselves nowadays, too. And so, again, I have to watch my portion control all the time. I would love to be eating frozen yogurt while I'm talking to you right now, but instead I'm like, you know what? I will have some frozen yogurt on the weekend, and I will get a medium size, and I will eat it with other people so it doesn't become this kind of binge situation. I mean, the things that you're experiencing are what we are all experiencing and never fully go away, so that's why we absolutely have to keep our sense of humor about it.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of keeping your sense of humor, actually. So what really ended up being the tipping point for you? Like what made it stick?
Well, there were a couple different things. It's funny reading some of the reviews of the book. Reviewers will be like, and this was the tipping point. And I'll be like, wow, was it? And I kind of look back. I think it was a little bit of everything. I remember one time I went to a doctor and he actually started crying because he felt so bad for me that I was so heavy and that he was trying to emphasize that I needed a change. And I left the office, and after comforting him, assuring him it would be okay, I left the office and binged. But I'm sure that spoke to me.
Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest things that happened, and this of course led to the title of my first book and my blog, was there was this guy at work. I was working in the fashion industry in New York, which is, at 450 pounds. I'm like, where would I be most accepted? Yes, the fashion industry. Let's go. P.S. They did not accept me, but lots of good stories for the book. But anyway, so there was this thin vice president, married, happy, could seemingly eat anything. And so one day I went into his office and mentioned to him that I had a weight problem because, again, at 450 pounds, I wasn't sure it was clear. And I asked him if he had kind of any advice because, in my head, not permed at that time, I'd let that go. But in my head, I was thinking that he maybe had some kind of secret information that hadn't been handed out to me. And he looked at me very glibly and he said, just stop eating so much. And of course, for the next week or so, I was like, that jerk, how, boy, he doesn't understand. And, imagining him getting fat and all these different scenarios. But the phrase just sort of resonated in my head and sort of kept going and going and going. And then, a week or so later, I happened to be watching Saturday Night Live. And John Goodman was hosting, the actor, and he was standing there just doing a monologue at the top of the show. And I noticed that he was sweaty and completely out of breath just from talking.
Yeah.
And I knew at that moment that I was looking in a mirror. And that really was the moment, like that moment paired with the just stop eating so much, which, turns out that's all the advice I think most of us need. That really sort of turned it around for me. But the adventure continued after there. I did lose weight in a very healthy way, took off 250 pounds. But then at one point, a nod to what you were just talking about, I put 100 of it back on.
Yeah.
and had to take that off again, and then just getting to that kind of mental place where I wasn't, cheating and wasn't on or off a diet. I mean, those phrases really play hell on us dieters, and I think can lead us to that binge mentality.
Yeah, yeah. I hate the term on or off a diet. I mean, I don't like to think of myself as being on a diet, actually. I wanted to make a lifestyle change or, something that was much more dynamic.
Well, that's exactly it. And, it's funny, living in LA, I see naturally thin people, not just at the zoo, but in real life. And, sometimes I'll observe them, especially like, actors or actresses and stuff. And I will notice that sometimes they eat this. It's a very strange phenomenon. They will eat half of a cookie and then stop. Okay. And this just, boggles my mind because you don't just stop at one cookie, you stop at the bag. Yeah. But, they're not afraid that they can never have another cookie again. Yeah. And but it sounds simple when we say it, but there really is that disconnect in our heads I've got to finish it all. I better do this today because I can't have cookies. And really it is about balance. If we applied all these techniques, we wouldn't even really need a diet per se. I know that for some of us, myself included, that having a plan can help. But I always encourage people to not just go by one plan. It really is such an individual journey. Mm-hmm. And if any organization is selling you the one-way fix-all, my advice is to run screaming in the other direction because we all have different tastes. We all have different nutritional needs. We all have different energy needs. Some of us need a bigger breakfast. Some of us need protein at breakfast. There's, and this means doing a little bit of research and paying attention. And yeah, it's a lot of work. And yeah, combined with exercise, it really sucks. But it doesn't suck walking into the Gap and buying a pair of jeans. Yeah. And for years and years, I could never do that. I was having to go to the big and tall store, and at a certain point, with a 60-inch waist, was at the top of their line. Like I was going to have to go online after that. Yeah. So, to be able to go into a store and, a normal people's clothing store and not even buy the top size, it's great. Or to be sitting in a job interview and not thinking, oh my God, my jeans are cutting off my oxygen supply. I hope this ends soon. Yeah. Or I have stories in the book about right after college. I had this great resume, I had a good GPA, and so people, would see me on paper and think, oh, that's great, let's bring him in. And when they saw that I weighed 450 pounds, they would literally avert eye contact, like that they might catch a disease or something. Yeah. It was awful, just the shunning that I felt. And so when you compare the work that it takes to feel good and look good, as opposed to the misery of not being comfortable in our own skin, the work is worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely worth it. I feel like getting up and walking now. So
that's very good.
It seems like social acceptance was a big motivator for you. I mean, is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. It still is. I will eternally be the fat kid at the high school cafeteria wanting to sit at the popular kids table. Yeah. Always, which again, explains why I moved to LA. It will never end. But yeah, I was a Air Force brat. My dad was in the military, and so we lived all over the world. And I lived a year in Singapore, and I went to high school in Germany. So along with being heavy, I always felt like I was on the outside looking in. Yeah. And I'm sure that led to me being a writer. So, I try and embrace it now for what it's worth. I don't regret any of those years. But there's definitely, that kind of social acceptance thing that I think those of us that are heavy feel like we might not be getting. And, even nowadays, and I'm no fan of super political correctness, especially being a writer. Believe me, if somebody can stick his foot in his mouth, it's me. Mm-hmm. But when you watch TV or hear comedians, there's still a lot of fat jokes, and at the end of the day, it kind of feels shitty, or it just doesn't feel good to us. And so, there's a lot of that, again, goes back to the mental weight that we're carrying around. And so I think because of things like that, yes, there's an eternal quest for me to be popular. So any popular people listening to this, please like me. That's all. That's all I have to say. Me. Just love me.
Do you find that people accept you easier now?
Yes. I'm sorry to say, for sure. When I moved to LA, I was, had already lost the weight and had even had surgery to have the skin removed, which I also write about in the book. Because after being so heavy, the excess skin won't go away, no matter how healthy of a way you lose it or how much exercise you do.
Yeah.
So when I moved down to LA, I was quote unquote a thin person, and it absolutely makes a difference, when you go into a meeting. Like even as a writer, somebody that works behind the cameras, it shouldn't matter what I look like, but it does. And, if they perceive you as thin and beautiful, and not that I rank quite there, but thin and, fairly pleasant, I would like to say I can attain on most days if the lighting is correct. It does help, and that sucks, but that's just sort of a fact of our society. If people are going to make eye contact with you and listen a little bit more. But I think a big part of that is the inner self-confidence, which also goes back to what we were talking about earlier. And I love to say, and anyone that checks out my blog will see this common theme, like that we are all supermodels, no matter what we weigh now, no matter, what size clothes we're wearing, no matter if we have a perm or not, we are supermodels. And I think the more that we sort of embrace that mentality, and if we can go into a room at any weight and look someone in the eye and feel good about ourselves, that's going to be reflected back to us, as opposed to the scared kid that was just out of college weighing 450 pounds. Sure, he was going to be judged, and he was. And listen, there's always going to be jerks that judge us for different things, but at the end of the day, those aren't people we necessarily want to be involved with anyway, unless they do a podcast. So then maybe you'll put up with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, jerks. So do you sometimes still think of yourself as the fat guy?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I mean, I'm always very wary of 5 pounds. It's funny, I actually don't weigh myself anymore. I found that even after I lost the weight, that for me, that could be something that could kick me into a binge. And in fact, I've always had a love-hate relationship with my scale. When I was at my heaviest, I got on my electronic scale one time and it read ERR. There was no number, and I wasn't sure what that meant. And I looked it up in the manual, and that meant error. So I'm like, yeah, no kidding. So, scales and me, not too close. So these days, I kind of pay more attention to how I feel and how my clothes are fitting. And there's absolutely times, like say right after the holidays, that, I'll put on my jeans and I'll be like, wow, did these shrink?
Yeah.
No, they did not shrink, Kevin. And then I know that I've got to cut back a little bit or maybe do a little bit more exercise. So it's always something I'm thinking about. And yes, inside I will always be the fat kid. So, if I go into a meeting or on set, or even if I'm at the mall, I'm still the scared little kid with a perm.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. So what about there are people who feel perfectly comfortable being overweight and or at least say they do. I mean, what do you think of that? I mean, do you think that's legitimate, or you think they're just fooling themselves?
Well, I love the attitude, feel good in your skin, absolutely. And I get slack for this, but I think they're not. I think they're a little out of touch. And I know that I, had my sassy moments when I was 450 pounds too. But again, like the physical evidence was there. I couldn't walk across a room without getting out of breath. Or or even talk on the phone. I would have to keep my hand on the mute switch so that when someone else was talking, they didn't think I was trying to have phone sex with them. and literally, it's so true. And just the miserable nights of sleep and just feeling awful and struggling to buckle my 60-inch belt. I was not happy. And I find it hard to believe, and yes, this is just my experience, but that's all I can speak from. I find it hard to believe that people are happy at that weight. And P.S., it is going to affect your health. If it hasn't already, it's going to affect your bones. It's going to affect your heart. They're finding now that obesity is tied to some cancers. So, I'm not saying that everybody has to be a size 2. Let me tell you, I'll never have a 30-inch waist, never. But be the best form of healthy that you can be. And if you're obese, that might not be the best way.
Yeah, it sounds like it's time to make some choices and start that iterative process, to use the big word again. So
very fancy. I like that you worked that in. Yeah, and even again, okay, so So don't go on a diet, but, drink a little more water, eat a little more clean, go to a farmer's market once a week and do some walking. Make that part of the regimen that proves to the world that you're great. And I'm not saying everyone's not great in any size. I'm a huge proponent of that, and I think that's a key to achieving success in terms of getting healthy.
Yeah.
But, it's really, you talk to your doctor, and you'll see that and plus it's tough. It's tough to date. It's tough to have social situations. I remember I had friends that I would see just hug other friends or pat them on the back, and people would literally not touch me when I was that heavy. And again, it's sort of like I had this disease. And, yes, some of it was in my head, but a lot of it wasn't.
Yeah. No, I've seen that. I mean, I haven't really experienced that myself. I'm not that big, but I've seen that, and I've probably participated in that a little, actually, with a couple of people I know who are very large. I'll have to start being mindful of that. But so, all right, aside from your books, I mean, you've got a couple of books out there. You've got Weightless, but you also have Just Stop Eating So Much, which ties in with your website, right?
Yes.
Aside from that, you are a writer and producer with Bridesmaid Films.
Yes.
And I'm putting links to all these things in the show notes so everybody listening can go check these out. But is that just, I don't know much about your production company, I'll be honest, but you do anything that's tied to this work, or is it just anything that comes along, or what?
Well, yes, I am a big whore and will do anything that comes along.
I used to work in that business.
Where's your big words now, Kevin? Yeah, you know what? I think that all of this is reflected in my work.
Yeah.
I did a show for MTV once, and it was all about the thin and beautiful. And I actually got an overweight character onto that show, which was a real struggle at the time, but it did happen. So I think that, we're all fat people inside, right? No matter what we weigh. Mm-hmm. I think that my journey has absolutely affected my writing and able to, no matter what characters I'm writing for, kind of portray what it's like to be vulnerable, whether, somebody's thin or good or evil or whatever they are. But yeah, I went into advertising writing after college, always knowing that I wanted to be a screenwriter. Yeah. And then after a few years in the ad business, finally braved up and moved down to LA. Eventually sold my first script. I always love to tell this story. I'd written this action movie called Epicenter. And it's big in Europe, which it is, by the way. But when I finished it, when I was writing it, I always imagined somebody like maybe Jennifer Lopez in the lead or whatever, this tough cop. And when it got bought by a B movie company, and so the producers called me. They're like, "We're so excited. We just got Tracy Lords to play the lead." Tracy Lords, the former porn actress.
Yes.
And I was like, "This is excellent. I've just moved to LA and a porn star is starring in my movie." Little did I know that was just the beginning of the adventure with the B movie company in terms of rewrites and stuff like that. And they even misspelled my name in the credits.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which I found out at the premiere.
Did they drop
they forget. Yeah, it was Greg McBride. But anyway, so that was my first sale, but all very good, and I'm grateful for it. And, the rest is kind of history. I write a lot of stuff. I tend to write a lot in the teen space, so I do a fair amount of work for MTV, ABC Family, the Disney Channel. And I'm sure that goes back to your previous question of, me being, am I still in the headspace of somebody that wants to sit at the popular table? Those are themes we can all relate to.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I love writing about the teen world is, to me, it's almost another universe from the adult world. Like, only when you're in high school, like, let's say your arch enemy is there, but only there do you have to see them every day. Like, when you're an adult, you can kind of limit the time you have to spend with your arch enemies, but in high school, they're going to be there every day, maybe in several classes. And then also in the teen world, there's a lot of brutality, and there's bullying, and there's awful things like that. But there's also a lot of honesty and we don't have in the adult world. So when you're writing for adult characters, stuff has to be thinly veiled and that sort of thing. But in the teen world, it's like, let it out. Here it comes, like a machine gun. Mm-hmm. And so I find that to be a very fun genre to write for.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that's more or less that's the audience I aim for when I'm writing my fiction. So yeah, I get it. I got some young adult stuff going on out there. So
I love that. I love that. Well, you see even at the movie theater now. I mean, the young adult world is booming, and that's because we're all in the high school cafeteria at the end of the day. I mean, it's themes we all can relate to, and even some of the great. I'm not necessarily. I don't peg myself as a big sci-fi guy, but you even look at a lot of science fiction stuff. Some of the real quality stuff that's being done now, and it all goes back to those same themes.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Darth Vader wanted to be liked, Kevin.
That's right. So
and he wore a big cloak to hide his figure flaws.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. He had body issues. He had a lot of body issues.
He did, actually. That's right. See.
So yeah. Okay. So if you want to learn more about Gregg McBride, you can connect with him online. A number of places really, but you can check him out at juststopeatingsomuch.com. Where you can check out his blog and find all kinds of goodies. You can pick his book up. Amazon is probably where I'm going to aim people, but you can pick it up. I've seen it everywhere. And I'm going to go check out your Bridesmaid Films website now, and I want to find I want to find some porn stars hanging out.
That's right. Google Gregg McBride and porn, everyone. Let's see where that takes us.
There you go. Start ranking high on those results. So
wherever, as long as my meta score is high, I don't care how it happens.
So go check him out online, and as always, you can find the links to his books and his sites in the show notes for this show. And if you ever have any questions, I'll pass them along to Gregg. You can call me at 281-809-WORD. That's 9673. Because I know no one wants to look at their phone while they're driving. I figure that's when most people are listening to this. So, and I hope you're okay with that. I'll pass questions along to you if I get them. You okay with that?
Absolutely. And there's a contact form on the JustStopEatingSoMuch.com site, and also Just Stop Eating So Much has a Facebook page as well. And I actually love when people ask questions or share recipes or whatever it is, because again, we're all in this together. I mean, I'm as inspired by the people who say they are inspired by me. So I think the more we break down these myths and the more we're in communication and again, keeping our sense of humor the whole time, the better.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to wrap up this show. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. And as always, you can learn more at wordslinger.com/podcast. I'm sorry, that's entirely wrong. It's kevintomlinson.com/podcast. I'm still working on the new website. So kevintomlinson.com/podcast, and I'll probably edit that entire section out. So thanks a lot, Gregg. And I'm going to wrap up now, but we'll send some people your way. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm going to go look up those words now that you use.
Good. I'll send you some links. All right. Take care, everybody. Well, that was Gregg McBride, author of Weightless, My Life as a Fat Man and How I Escaped It, which, I'm hoping one day I can say about myself. So, yeah, that was a great interview. I like Gregg a lot. He's one of these guys that's very inspirational, but he's also very down to earth and very relatable. He's easy to connect with. He's got some. I don't know. He's just, there's an energy about him that I really enjoy. So, great guy. So if you want to learn more about Gregg, you can check him out online. You can go read his blog, actually. It's very interesting. If you go check out, if you go to his site, juststopeatingsomuch.com, you can find the blog there, but it's also at blog.juststopeatingsomuch.com. So go check that out. And if you want to pick up his book, it's available. You'll be able to find it in the show notes below. It's called, there's two of them actually. One of them is Weightless, My Life as a Fat Man and How I Escaped It. And then there's also Just Stop Eating So Much. Both of those are going to be available online on Amazon. So go check them out. You can get them on my links below. If you do that, you're helping me out a little because I have affiliate links, and that's part of how I fund the show. So I appreciate that. So go check that out. I also fund the show through a Patreon campaign, and that is it's proving interesting. I'm actually getting interaction with people through that, which I hadn't really expected. It's another venue for just promoting the show and getting it out there. So, but if you're enjoying these interviews with guys like Gregg and some of my past guests, I'd appreciate it if you'd kind of help me out. I spend several hours a week working on the show, And, I love doing it. It's a labor of love. I'll probably always do it. And you'll never have to worry about paying for the show outright. Like, it's never going to cost you just to listen. But if you are, if you're feeling a little charitable and you want to help out, it helps me tremendously to get a little bit of financial kickback there. So you can check out patreon.com/Kevin Tumlinson, or you can go to kevintumlinson.com and click Fund Me to go to that same page. And on there you can sign up to give as little as $1 a month. Which is incredibly cheap, because you get 4 episodes a month. So that's like getting an episode at 25 cents a pop. So not bad. And it's all voluntary. You can withdraw at any time. So if you ever feel like you just don't want to keep giving, don't keep giving. I'm fine with that. So go check that out. Patreon.com/Kevin Tumlinson, or go to kevintumlinson.com/fund me. It may be /fund me. Fund-me. I gotta check that URL, but go to kevintumlinson.com and click Fund Me, and you'll be able to hit me up. If you have questions for me or any of my guests on the show, I hope you'll call in. You can call me at 281-809-WORD. That's 281-809-9673, and that will give you a direct voicemail that comes to me, and I get pinged immediately. Heck, man, if I'm feeling generous, I might just answer, but that would screw up your voicemail. But leave me a voicemail that I can play on the air, or just ask me a question that I can pass along to a guest. I'm happy to do either one. You can also do this if you are overseas, meaning outside the U.S. Go over to kevintumlinson.com/podcast and click on the voicemail button. It's a little tab on the right-hand side of the screen. It floats with you on that page. And that's connected to SpeakPipe, which connects directly to the WordSlinger brain, and I will get your voicemail and play it on the air or pass it along. So that's 2 ways you can reach me. You can also email me from that same site. So go check that out. And since you're listening and you're clearly a fan of the Word Slinger, why not become a slinger yourself? You can join the tribe and be a slinger if you go to kevintumlinson.com/podcast once again. Get on the mailing list, and you can get updates on the show, special announcements and giveaways. You can even get free books. If you are a fan of fiction, you got plenty of books to choose from. You can go check it out. Surf around on that site once you're there. kevintumlinson.com is my gateway to all things Kevin. In future episodes, I'm going to be pushing everybody to the WordSlingers site directly. I'm nearly there. I'm kind of, I know this has been weeks. It's been months, actually. And to be honest with you, I've been a little lazy about it. But I'm getting it pulled together. But right now, the hub is kevintumlinson.com/podcast. And again, you can call 281-809-WORD, 281-809-9673. I appreciate all your help, all your commitments and donations, all your feedback. I love all of it, so send it along. Thanks so much for being here this week. Tune in next week. We'll have another great interview. I've got some things lined up, some great people I think you're going to enjoy. So I will talk to you very soon.
Word Slinger.